I'd like to now start in Chapter 1, which is under, of course, Section 1, the theory. I'm going to do the first 6 chapters, and we're going to start with Chapter 1. I'm using the book as the outline for this presentation. Now, under Chapter 1, I entitled it, All Little Children Come from Heaven. It's an implication about what the origin of everything is. And what I'd like to talk about here is the metaphysics of consciousness or being. So, I'm going to start with a quote from the Bhagavad Gita by Lord Krishna, which is a holy book of the Hindus, and it's in the last book in a collection called the Mahabharata. I quote, "All beings, O son of Kunti, merge at the end of an era in my original form, and at the beginning of an era, all those I create again." What Lord Krishna is saying here is pretty profound. It really echoes the metaphysical concepts of the ancients, especially in the East. And what they believed was that there was an outbreathing and an inbreathing. And this is how everything is created and reabsorbed, and you could say recycled. And within this outbreathing and inbreathing are many transformations and different things to distinguish. However, there's also a pop song that also reminded me of this too, why this is so unique, because our importance, because like the song went like, nothing from nothing leaves nothing. You got to have something if you want to be with me. And this really upset, in a sense, one of the early Roman Catholic Church fathers, Tertullian. He could not fathom that the earth and everything was connected to a singular unity, so he created a doctrine which he couldn't find any support for, scripturally or anywhere in the world, that said basically that the universe was created out of nothing. Well, try to sell that, which he did, and this is and apparently people bought it, but it's really unsound and untrue. Modern day physics has shown this to be totally absurd. But nonetheless, consciousness is the unifying principle behind subatomic particles, which quantum physics has shown over and over again. And I'll put it to you this way, if you understand quantum physics and you're not upset, you don't understand it if you're a materialist. If you're a materialist, you're very upset. Now, to get back to Lord Krishna is telling Kunti or Arjuna, because this is the main character in the story of the Bhagavad Gita, aside from Krishna. And Arjuna represents us, the human being, the lower self, and the higher self is really Krishna. And Lord Krishna is telling Kunti that all the universes and everything in them are dependent on one single reality. That reality is the one absolute reality. Just as the string theory in physics predicts at least 22 dimensions underlying our current 3-dimensional experience, there is a foundational or fundamental ground of being that gives rise to these dimensions. For Lord Krishna, this fundamental root of all existence is the self, the true consciousness. The self is the causeless cause of all things and is at the same time within everything. This is what we in the West would call God. And that's true. That is what in the West what we would call God. There's been a great argument by Thomas Aquinas, who made the argument that everything that appears, and it reminds me of the Buddhist argument too, everything that appears around you in the objective world is a result of a cause. And for example, a fruit tree. You couldn't have a fruit tree without a seed pre-existing that particular tree. And that seed couldn't have come from anywhere except another pre-existing tree. And so therefore you couldn't have an infinite series of trees going back endlessly into time, because if you did, you couldn't be here now within this third dimension. So therefore there must be a causeless cause, a higher cause, a vertical cause, if you will, that's underlying this horizontal cause, and this is what we call God. It's a very sound argument, very philosophically sound, and of course that causeless cause is what the East called consciousness, in which today modern quantum science is showing to be true. Well, anyway, what I'd like to talk about is this rootless root, or this causeless cause, but first I'd like to give you a couple terms in Sanskrit just to make it more, authentic. In the Sanskrit, which is an Eastern lost tongue almost today, except for scholars in the East, the religious tongue, almost like what Latin is to the Catholic Church, what you have here is two terms, several terms I'd like you to get used to. One is pralaya, and the other one is manvantara. Now, pralaya is a reabsorption of creation. Manifestation, or manvantara, is the creation. Now, the ancients neatly put this into a symbolic form of out-breathing and in-breathing. So, the cosmic logos, we'll say, that creates the universe, out-breathes everything, even the creators under this intelligence that do all the work. And at a certain point in time, it in-breathes, and everything goes into pralaya, our non-existence, our neutral. And this is a unique way of saying it. We have many rhythms. We out-breathe, in-breathe. We have the breathing of the heart. I mean, rhythms are really how everything is done. Rhythm is sound. Sound is, of course, the Word. And in the beginning was the Word was God, the Word was with God, and there was not one thing created that was not created by Him, or the cosmic logos. So this is kind of a universal concept. Now what I'd like to do is sort of throw something at you which will be a little hard maybe to comprehend. Don't worry about it, but we're going to talk about existence at its very root, at its very hard to understand transcendence. There's another term in the East called para-Brahm. Para-Brahm is the God that never manifests. It's the cause of all things, yet itself never moves, never changes. And no one can ever know it as it is. It's transcendent. But out of itself, it polarizes and divides and gives birth to the universe. And this is where it's different than what Tertullian believes. This is where it is virgin born out of itself. And so God is the substance of everything there is, and is not separate from it, which is called monism, which is the real truth. Now, picture, if you will, let's try to picture para-Brahm, who's this transcendent being that has no attributes at all, none whatsoever, that we can comprehend, so it really has none. Now, what I try to do is I picture a black, endless space, and in this endless space, I picture what you would call an endless ocean. And then in this ocean, you could say there's liquid everywhere, solid liquid. But to make it even more abstract and transcendent, let's take that liquid and let's make it solid. Let's make it so solid that it actually is 750 trillion tons per square inch for the sake of discussion. Wow. And it's infinite. It goes in every direction, which means there's nothing. So it's a no thing. And this is why the ancients call it that, or no thing. Now, this no thing polarizes within itself, believe it or not, a male polarity and a female polarity, to put it in our human language. And this polarity are its intentions and thoughts. And this polarity, which is repeated on many levels after this, is the original virgin birth, because out of this polarity, where the essence of para-Brahm divides into male and female, gives rise to the eternal Son who's always there. So they're not really being created. They're there all the time as eternal flows or streams. And the Son that rises out of this male and female polarity within this transcendent being is what we call the unmanifested logos. It never manifests, but it's the eternal Son of which the Western tradition of the Trinity was really based. So without the feminine, they lost the feminine as time went by. And this is too bad, because the feminine was a great key that we lost. Now, as we go on with this, what I'd like to say is that which has no attributes but beingness, this is para-Brahm, polarizes, male-female polarity, for lack of a better way of saying it, and the Son is born within it, but it's eternally born, so it's eternally begotten. That's where the term comes from. You see? They were always building on this. Now, all the pictures you'll see of Mary holding this baby, these are the virgin birth. These are all symbols of this process on every level. Now that which is what we'll call parabram, moves within itself, its essence being the Great Mother, gives virgin birth to the eternal Son. Sometimes this is represented as a dot. Now the Son, which is the unmanifested Logos, now carries the intentions of this divine Trinity to the second Logos, which we call the unmanifested manifested Logos. A little confusing, but don't let it throw you. And what forms out of this is a vortex or a polarity between them. The unmanifested manifested Logos then gives birth to the third Logos, which you and I understand as the creator of the universe. In the beginning was the Word, or sound, and the Word was God. The Word was with God. There was not one thing created that was not created by Him. Okay, so this is the cosmic Logos, the third Logos, the manifested Logos. Now, a divine vortex forms, as I'm saying, a polarity between the transcendent and what we would call the manifested. And this polarity is great because out of this, everything is based on this vortex. Now, all three Logos together, the first Logos, the second, and the third, are called the cosmic Trinity by me. It makes it easier to discuss. Okay, now, the cosmic Trinity, the lowest being on the cosmic Trinity being the manifested Logos, we would call Brahman, or the Christ, according to Orthodox Christianity. The Word, the Logos. Okay, now, the third Logos itself, it does do one very thing unique. It creates spiritual matter, which creates space for the first time within parabram. Now, this is a mystery. It's a mystery. But space is a gift of love so that we can exist within it. It's very unique. So the seven Logis come out of the third Logos. Even the third Logos creates space, or we'll say spiritual atoms for the sake of discussion, but really they're not. They're just holes in space in a sense, convoluted holes. The seven Logis do all the creation. They are seven rays of manifestation that come out of the third Logos. Now, what's interesting about this is that initiates, which we'll talk about later on in the series, initiates deal with higher consciousness. Initiates are advanced in their thinking. They're way beyond where we're at right now. Now, initiates refer to the three Logos with occult symbolism. The first one is a circle with a dot in it. This is the unmanifested Logos that's within parabram. Then the connection between the unmanifested Logos and the manifested is the unmanifested manifested. We give them both names, kind of a blend of both. And this is always described as a circle with a horizontal line through it, which means male and female. It divides within itself a polarity, which gives birth to the third manifested Logos, which creates the foundations of matter, even though it's invisible and spiritual, which is the circle with the cross in it. These three together form the cosmic Trinity. So the circle with the dot is the unmanifested, which gives parabram's intentions of what to do. The unmanifested has the ideas of the intentions, which is the circle with the line through it. And finally, the third Logos is the manifested Logos and creates the primal spiritual matter out of creating holes in space in parabram, which finally gives manifestation to the seven Logi that create all the levels of existence, from the most subtle to the most gross. Now, this universal vortex, this spinning, is important to understand. It's hard to totally give you my complete comprehension without the book, but we're going to try anyway. But basically what I'm saying here is that this vortex is a universal archetypal relationship that is the manifestation behind everything. Now, it's important to remember that parabram is the root consciousness behind all levels of consciousness and all phenomena. At every level of manifestation from Adam to God, there is a self-organizing, non-manifested center. It never changes. It's in Leah. Pralaya, Leah means neutral. Is a divine vortex, if you will. This vortex is always in Leah or neutral. That's all I can say. It's always non-moving. It's the organizing principle, though. Now, what's interesting about that is that from a Western perspective, a scientist named Edwin D. Babbitt tried to conceptualize this primal vortex and in its more sophisticated forms in a book in 1878 called The Principles of Light and Color, of which the Theosophical Society back in the late 1800s also adopted in the early 1900s through the work of Annie Besant and Leadbeater. But nonetheless, it's an ancient concept of which nobody owns really. It's universal. Now, love, as I said before, is space. These holes of space are created by the cosmic logos, or the manifested logos, at the beginning of our universe, though at a very invisible level. Through an unknown process, Parabrahm is able to contract upon itself to allow these holes in space to even exist. Now, this is a fabulous reality. How does this thing do this? Retract to allow these holes to exist, but they do. But they're not holes in the sense that it's a hole. It's really a vortex, or I would say if you took a donut and put it in an ocean, everything that's the ocean in the middle of the donut and around it is Parabrahm. You could say the donut is a hole in space, being held there by the consciousness of the cosmic logos. This winds up being the material, the basic material, which all other manifestations come from, all the way down to our solid granite rock that we see here. If we get into the subatomic level, we'll begin to find these vortexes, these whirlings. Now, our vortex model of space, I guess you could say, is either a donut or a coreless apple, you might say. So everything within there is Parabrahm, everything around it is Parabrahm. Just the hole itself that the vortex moves around is actually the hole in space. Simple as I can make it. Now, this universal vortex, you'll see it even in the physical world. You remember a vortex pattern is repeated at every level of manifestation. In the physical world of the senses, the effects of the vortices can be seen. As previously stated, they are the centers that galaxies rotate around. You see them in atoms. But you remember Katrina. Look at Katrina. Look at the picture of the pattern, the weather pattern of Katrina. Look at a picture of the Milky Way galaxy. You see the spinning around this vortex, the center. And these centers, from a physical perspective, are what our scientists call black holes. These black holes, as they collapse, everything around them, everything we understand with our five senses in the three-dimensional world leaves and collapses into nothingness. And so what you see happening with a star that's collapsing, that's going supernova and then collapsing, is the black hole that was holding it together is now growing and spinning and turning with more intensity. It's starting to suck everything in, and will bring it into that black hole, and it'll actually bring it into non-manifestation, our pralaya. So what happens universally with the great pralaya, and what happens symbolically with a lesser pralaya, but major to us, a solar system pralaya, is happening all the time. This is the universal vortex, is a black hole. Now, the main thing to remember also in this first chapter I want to get across is that all these centers are the same center. So if you took the center of a galaxy 100 light years away and put your finger in it, and you took another galaxy 100 light years from that one away, or apart from each other, your fingers would be touching each other because there's no anything there. It's that. It's pralaya. It's Parabrahm. It's absolute. So the fingers would be touching. Well, I hope that wasn't too confusing for you, and I want you just to hang in there. It's important to lay these foundations down one time, and you can play this over and over again, and I think you'll start to get it. Let the teachings work on you. That's the way they have to do it. And it's been great working with you again through this series, and hang in there. Don't give up, and let your spirit lead you. Thank you very much.